"Your software is worthless," they chuckled. Their entire company currently operates on my platform, but they are unaware that I am the owner. His face outright shock. I'm Lena Moore, founder and CEO of Archbyte Systems. 6 years ago, I was just an intern in that building across the river, the one with the outdated logo still clinging to its last bit of relevance. Now I stand at the top floor of my own tower, the Austin skyline unfolding in every direction like a silent audience. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, I can see the office where everything once fell apart. It's strange how memory sharpens when you're looking down at the place that nearly broke you, that corner window. It used to be my dream to sit there one day to be heard, respected, maybe even seen. But they never saw me. Not really. Back then, I was just another junior coder with wild ideas and zero credibility. I wore thrift store blazers and carried my prototype around like a lifeline, hoping someone would care enough to look. Most didn't. I remember the day they shut me down like it was yesterday. I remember the sting of their silence, the weight of a stolen design, and the slow unraveling of everything I believed I was building. They erased my name, but not my vision. That moment, standing outside with my badge deactivated and my ideas buried under someone else's signature, felt like the end. I know better now. That was just the beginning. People love the comeback story. They see the power, the polish, the control. What they don't see are the nights you scream into your pillow because your code won't compile, or the hours you stare at a login screen wondering what the hell you're doing. But I'm here now, and from this height, I see it all: the journey, the betrayal, the resurrection. It's not revenge, it's recognition. And if you're wondering how I got from that rejection to this penthouse buckle-in, because this isn't a fantasy, this is what happens when the person you underestimated stops waiting to be invited in and builds the door herself. It started in a glass-walled conference room that smelled like lemon cleaner and ego. I was 23, barely a year out of school, and they'd invited me to present what I thought could be the backbone of their next-generation AI platform. I had built it from scratch over 3 brutal months, skipping sleep meals and most of my sanity. I remember the slide deck trembling slightly in my hands. My manager nodded at me to begin, but I could already feel the tension in the room. Martin Galloway, the founder himself, leaned back in his chair like a bored king at a peasant's pitch. I walked him through the logic clusters, the predictive nodes, and the lean memory load. When I said the system had cut internal latency by 63% in trial environments, he raised an eyebrow like I'd just told him I invented fire. He didn't ask questions. He smirked. Then he flipped through the deck like it was a takeout menu and tossed it on the table. "This feels like a science fair project," he said. "You want me to risk my enterprise network on something built by a kid?" Aaron, my team lead, tried to chime in. Said the numbers were real, said the performance benchmarks beat the current systems across the board. But Martin waved him off like he was swatting at a fly. He told me to stick to my assigned tasks, or I'd soon have no tasks at all. No one said my name, not once. They just referred to me as her. I walked out with a frozen smile and a laptop I could barely grip because my fingers had gone numb. I went back to my cubicle, eyes dry, but vision blurred. I deleted the presentation, wiped the staging environment, and told myself I'd get over it. I didn't. 2 weeks later, I stayed late one night and checked the system logs out of habit. My credentials hadn't been revoked. That was the first red flag. The second was a folder named Pipeline V2 sitting on the shared drive. Inside were flowcharts, code snippets, system architecture notes, every line I'd written, every function I'd named. Only now the author's field said Aaron Patel. At first I thought it was a copy for reference, maybe some oversight. But the deeper I looked, the more deliberate it felt. My entire system had been lifted, renamed, and quietly rebranded as part of the company's new internal platform. A press release even followed announcing a proprietary AI optimization tool built by Stratus's senior architects. I wasn't mentioned, not even once. I stared at the screen trying to feel something. Rage, betrayal, shame. All I felt was hollow, like I'd been scraped out. I shut my laptop and went home to an apartment that smelled like old takeout and broken promises. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there fully dressed on the floor, with my eyes open until morning. The version they released was flawed from the start. They didn't understand the dependencies didn't respect the safeguards. Within 6 weeks, it started lagging. Customers complained. By the third month, a cascade failure took out their CRM and internal analytics for 36 hours. And I said nothing. I didn't leak emails or tweet vague accusations. I didn't march into HR demanding credit. I let them burn. Quietly. Completely. Because while they were busy repackaging what they didn't understand, I was already writing version 3. Stronger. Faster. Patented under my own name, and stored far from any corporate server. I promised myself that day, sitting on the tile floor of my kitchen with a granola bar and a mug of instant coffee, that they'd never get near my work again. I stopped being the intern with potential. I became the ghost in their systems, the name they forgot, and the architect of everything they didn't see coming. They stole my work, sure, but they couldn't steal the fire, and it lit inside me. The apartment was barely 600 square feet. The kind of place where the bed was also the couch and the kitchen, shared a wall with the shower. I kept the lights low to save on the electric bill and lived mostly on microwave burritos and cheap cereal. There were no dinner parties, no weekends, no room for anything that wasn't the rebuild. I used a folding table as a desk and stacked code printouts on boxes labeled books, which I never unpacked. Every wall echoed with silence, except for the steady tap of keys and the soft hum of my old laptop fighting to keep up. It wasn't glamorous. I wore the same hoodie for a week straight and marked days by how much coffee I ran out of. But in that space, stripped of noise and ego, something came back to life. The code started speaking to me again, not as a tool, but as a language only I could shape. I didn't just rebuild what they stole. I reimagined it from the ground up, layered in protections, buried the core logic under decoys, and encoded my fingerprint deep into the framework. This time, if anyone tried to take it, they'd trip a landmine of legal filings and encrypted walls. Every morning I woke up stiff from sleeping on a too-firm futon and dove right back into the flow. No meetings, no distractions, just logic and resilience. There were nights I forgot to eat, and days when the sun rose before I'd even realized it had set. I filed the patent quietly under my name, double-checked the timestamps, sent the paperwork by certified mail, and kept the receipt in a fireproof box under my bed. That part mattered more than sleep. The loneliness was real. I didn't talk to friends much, didn't explain where I'd gone or what I was building. It wasn't bitterness. It was focused. And maybe a little fear that if I looked up too soon, I'd lose the momentum. That apartment never felt like home. It felt like a lab, a bunker, a place where dreams went to get sharpened. And I sharpened mine every single night until it was bulletproof. No one was watching. No one believed I'd make it past the loss. But in that silence, something hardened. Not my heart, my resolve. They took my work, but they didn't break me. They built the version of me who would never need their approval again. It was a closed-door tech showcase in San Jose. No cameras, no fanfare, just a room full of sharp eyes and sharper questions. I stood next to a modest demo booth with a laptop, a live dashboard, and my nerves barely in check. Then she appeared, Lena Moore, a venture strategist with a reputation for spotting overlooked gold. She didn't smile politely or skim the pitch. She asked questions that cut straight to the bone. How does your system respond to asynchronous load conflicts? What security protocols adapt during cross-system latency spikes? She wasn't there to be impressed. She was there to understand. We ended up talking until the janitors began shutting down lights around us. I showed her what I had built, the real architecture, not the slick slides. She leaned in, eyes focused. And when I mentioned that a major competitor had tried to replicate it and failed, her expression shifted. That failure, she said. I've seen the aftermath. They lost 3 major clients last quarter. That was yours, wasn't it? I nodded. That was their version. This is mine. She didn't blink. $5 million for 20% equity, she said. Access to her enterprise network, introductions to infrastructure partners, and full operational independence. We shook hands before the janitor even reached our corner. Archbyte Systems was born 10 days later. I chose the name because it felt clean, sharp, and forward-moving. Within weeks, we had our first enterprise license signed with a regional healthcare system on the verge of collapse. My system stabilized them in 2 months. The word spread fast. Tech blogs started calling Synapse Core a new gold standard. CIOs reached out discreetly asking if it was true that Archbyte's platform was plug-and-play over legacy stacks. And quietly on the other side of town, my old company was buckling under the weight of its broken clone. They rolled out another patch. It failed again. Clients left. Lawsuits followed. And I kept coding. Not for revenge, but for the sheer momentum of knowing I had finally outrun the shadow they once cast. For the first time, I wasn't building in secret. I wasn't building to survive. I was building to lead. And the world was finally ready to follow. The subject line was sterile. Strategic Collaboration Inquiry. I almost missed it buried between contract approvals and onboarding requests. But the sender made me pause. Stratus Logic Inc. It had been nearly 3 years since I last spoke that name out loud. I opened the email with one eyebrow raised. It was polite, polished, and exactly as desperate as they tried not to sound. They were restructuring. They were exploring partnerships. They had been watching Archbyte with interest. I closed the tab without replying. Let them sweat. I left it untouched for 2 full weeks. Every morning their stock dipped a little more. Analysts whispered about leadership issues, client attrition, and a slow hemorrhage of tech credibility. I watched it all from the 47th floor of Archbyte Tower, usually during the last set of my morning workout. The gym windows faced west, perfect line of sight to their glass monolith with the fading blue logo. I never looked away. Some days I wondered if they saw me too. Probably not. They were still looking down even as they fell. That was always their problem. Elena noticed the sender before I said anything. She burst into my office with the email in hand and a grin she didn't bother hiding. "Tell me you're going to respond," she said. Eventually I told her. But not just yet. We watched their stock slide another 12%. Internal reports leaked. A key CTO had resigned. One major client defected to a new vendor. I didn't even have to lift a finger. My silence was doing the work for me. By the time I replied, the tone had shifted. They weren't inquiring anymore. They were pleading. I offered a meeting on my terms in my building. No remote call, no neutral ground. If they wanted help, they would walk into my house and sit at my table. The morning of the meeting, I lifted heavier than usual. Every rep felt like it was scraping off the residue of that boardroom from years ago. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the girl they dismissed. I saw the architect who rebuilt herself from the ashes they left behind. I took the elevator down in a navy suit tailored within an inch of perfection, the kind of cut that says power without needing to raise your voice. As the doors opened into our executive lobby, I caught a glimpse of their reflection in the glass. 3 figures, all too familiar. My assistant's voice buzzed gently through the intercom. "Ms. Moore, your guests have arrived." I smiled calm and clean. Let them wait a minute longer. I wanted the room to be ready, and I wanted the skyline to be glowing just right behind me when they walked in. They entered like they still ran the room. Martin Galloway walked in first, wearing the same kind of suit he wore the day he called my work immature. 2 executives followed close behind. One of them was Erin Patel. She didn't look up right away. I motioned them toward the table with a slow nod, taking my place at the head. None of them flinched, not even a flicker of recognition. I had changed more than my name. Success does that. It rearranges the face they thought they knew. Martin cleared his throat and leaned forward. Fingers steepled like he was about to deliver a TED Talk. He launched into a carefully scripted pitch about modernization, strategic collaboration, and the long-term vision of Stratus Logic. His words were smooth. Too smooth. I waited. Erin sat stiff beside him, eyes flicking through her notes like they might protect her from what was coming. I kept mine focused on him. When he finally paused, I gave the faintest smile. "Then let's talk about what that's going to cost you." The room shifted. His jaw tightened. I could feel the air drop a degree. He recovered quickly, nodding like he was still in control. I asked him to explain the technical scope they expected Synapse Core to fulfill. He started talking in circles. Buzzwords stacked like cards. Predictive analytics, modular interfacing, distributed nodes. I let him finish. Then I tilted my head slightly. "I noticed you skipped over your last modernization attempt. The one that failed after 29 days and cost your company $30 million. Aaron's hand froze. Martin blinked hard. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said they were misled, given poor recommendations. I reached under the table and tapped the hidden panel. The wall screen behind me flickered on. Lines of code appeared first, then the diagrams, then annotations, then my name, my real name, top of every slide, every file, the original project deck from 6 years ago, bold in black ember L. Dawn. No one spoke. Aaron's stylus clattered to the table. One of the other execs let out a low curse under his breath. Martin went pale, staring at the screen like it was a ghost. I turned to him, calm, steady. "Hello again." The silence was louder than any outburst. He leaned forward slightly, voice uneven. "You're not Lena Moore." "That's my middle name," I said. "And my grandmother's maiden name. You knew me as Ember. The intern you dismissed, the one whose work you buried." His mouth moved, but no sound came out. He said something about legal action, about the company's IP. I cut him off. "The system was patented before I ever pitched it. You never checked the filings. Probably still don't have access to anything past 2020. I stood slowly, adjusted my blazer. The room remained frozen. "Let's be honest," I said. "You're not here to talk about partnership. You're here because everything you built on my stolen foundation is crumbling. And now you're looking up at the girl you tried to erase." Martin stared at the screen like it was still glitching. He looked for a way out, a loophole, a line of defense that didn't exist. His voice cracked when he asked what exactly I wanted from them. I didn't sit down. I didn't blink. I slid the folder across the table clean and sharp. Inside were signed letters of intent from shareholders, voting blocks, acquisition clauses, timelines. My offer wasn't a negotiation. It was already happening. We've secured 42% of your voting shares at your current valuation. We expect to finalize the rest within the quarter. Your board has already seen the terms. Martin's hands trembled as he flipped the pages. His lips moved in fragments. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. The girl he once told to stop wasting his time was now his new employer. The software he laughed at was now his company's only lifeline. Aaron stared at the document, her face unreadable. The other two execs avoided my eyes entirely. I waited. Let the weight of it land. Then I said it. "I'm not selling to you. I'm buying you." Silence collapsed into disbelief. Martin tried to steady his breath, reaching for the only card he had left. "The board won't approve this." I smiled. "They already have." I tapped a second control. The screen behind me changed. Rows of digital signatures, green-lit votes, full motion passed, effective immediately. One by one the names appeared, some familiar, some who once sat in that same boardroom and said nothing when I was pushed out. Erin shifted in her seat. Her posture slumped. She knew. She had always known this day might come. She just never thought I'd be the one holding the pen. Martin leaned back like someone had cut his strings. "What happens to us?" he asked, barely louder than a whisper. I sat again, slow and deliberate. ARC retains talent, but we start with a full review, especially regarding how senior staff handle innovation. And credit. The words weren't cruel, just final. The reckoning wasn't loud. It was precise and long overdue. Security will escort you out once this meeting ends. HR will follow up before day's end. I paused, then stood again and adjusted my blazer. "Oh, and Martin, your office has a great view. I think I'll keep it." I left them there. In the same silence they once handed to me. The room emptied, footsteps quiet against the marble. I watched them from above as they were guided through the lobby. No headlines yet, no press release, just 3 ghosts fading into glass and sunlight. Back upstairs, Elena was waiting with a glass of bourbon and a raised brow. "How did it feel?" she asked. I looked out across the skyline where the old logo still clung to a dying brand. "Better than I imagined," I said. Then I called our legal team. "Let's make it official. Let's start building what they never could. On the ruins they left behind." The press conference room was quiet before the cameras started rolling. Reporters shuffled their notes, glanced at each other, unsure of what exactly had just happened to one of the oldest tech giants in the region. Then I stepped up to the podium. I wore the same navy blazer I had on the day Martin Galloway told me I was wasting his time. No one else noticed, but I did. It was a reminder, not of him, but of me, of how far I had come and how much I had learned. I introduced myself. Lena Moore, former intern, now CEO of Archbyte Systems and majority stakeholder of the company that once called my work a science fair project. There was a flicker across the crowd, whispers, recognition. I told them I had stayed in the shadows on purpose, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Because sometimes when you're building something that matters, silence is your greatest ally. I let the work speak until it was loud enough to stand on its own. This was never about revenge. It was about restoration, about honoring an idea that was once dismissed and giving it the room to become what it was always meant to be. I didn't need to humiliate anyone. Their downfall was never my goal. I wanted to build. I wanted to evolve, to show what happens when you stop asking for space and start claiming it with action. I looked out at the cameras, at the notepads and blinking lenses. I said what I had waited years to say. You can't grow in places that refuse to let you shine. And I stopped shrinking the day I realized I didn't need their light. The applause started small, then swelled. But it wasn't the sound that stayed with me. It was the stillness after. The moment when the room knew without needing a headline that something had shifted. I stepped away from the podium and didn't look back. Not at the flashbulbs, not at the questions being called out. I had said what mattered. The rest would follow. Outside, the sky was open, bright, unfiltered. And for the first time in years, I wasn't walking away from anything. I was walking into it. If you've made it this far, thank you. Not just for listening to my story, but for staying with me through every quiet moment and every turn I didn't see coming. I told this not because I wanted to be heard, but because maybe someone out there needs to feel a little less alone. If you've ever been underestimated, passed over, or told you weren't ready, I want to hear about it. I want to know the moment someone looked at you and only saw a version of you they thought they could dismiss, and I want to know what you did with that moment. Share your story in the comments, the part where they told you no, the part where you almost believed them, or the part where you're still fighting to prove them wrong, because your voice deserves space. And your journey, even if it doesn't feel like much right now, might be the one someone else needs to hear. Let's build a space where we don't wait to be chosen. We just started showing up. I'll be reading every single one, and maybe, just maybe, someone else will see your story and think, if they can do it, maybe I can too.